I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
Today, this is really special. We've been trying to get this guy on the show for quite a while now. He's a lawyer. He is dressed way nicer than Pony Express has ever been dressed, I think. But in all seriousness, this guy has come into F3 and just had a tremendous impact. He's launched a new site, identified an excellent successor. He's also, and I think it was initially self-proclaimed, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree he has the best form when it comes to goofballs. And so we've got our man Toadstool on the cast today. And Toadstool, where we like to start off is just kind of tell us about that first workout, who EH'd you, if you remember who was on the queue, or maybe some of the goofy stuff that happened at that first workout. And then how did we land on the name Toadstool?
Yeah, sure. Great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. I know it's been a little while that we've tried to schedule this, and listening to the Gloom podcast, I've been impressed with what you've done and really disappointed with what Pony Express has done on the show. And as you mentioned, I am a much more sophisticated presence than he is as an attorney here with my tie on. He does not have a tie on, for all of you listening. So in terms of my journey to joining F3, I'm a little over 3 years into it at this point. It was April of 2019, and I live really close. I live in the district. I live right by Westside High School, where Coliseum and Battlefield are located. And a few of the guys had reached out, but I live very close to Swinger and Honey Stinger. I also live very close to Tenderfoot, Grassroots, Bloodshot, you name it, a few of those guys. I think earlier in the fall, Brazilian would tell you that he had reached out to me via text and said, hey, come to an F3 workout. And I just ghosted him and completely ignored the text message that he sent. But something struck, I think, in that April of 2019 period. And so Swinger reached out to me and said, hey, there's this morning workout group. Will you join? Or at least just come for one morning. And I said, sure. So he picked me up, as I adopted that same practice of doing when I EH'd an FNG, and that was at Cornhusker Handicap, which was one of the only sites at the time. I think it was maybe what was it, Plague, like the third or fourth site?
Yeah, yep. It was Oracle, Maze, and Cornhusker were kind of the Murph, I guess. So one of the
and then there was So that was the only Tuesday site, and I pretty instantly fell in love with it. I think not only because the workout was strong and I wanted that sort of physical outlet, but just the fellowship of the first morning and just seeing kind of how the structure worked at the end with a COT. I bought in pretty quickly just to that sort of having a couple minutes at the end where somebody opens up and is vulnerable and is willing to share with a bunch of guys. And I think it probably says something to like the place I was at in my life and needing it at the time, because I was, I had lots of friends. I'm a really, really popular guy, really, really fun to be around. But I kind of had gotten in a rut. I mean, I'm an attorney, maybe Pony sympathizes with this from time to time. I feel like for a long time there, all I hung out with were a lot of other attorneys that I knew either from law school or from jobs. We're all the same cynical people. We all have the same cynical attitudes. And there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe if Lansbury is listening, he can attest to this, because him and I have been good friends since law school. But I needed that sort of different experience of like, male companionship, and having it in the F3 setting really worked. So that's how I came to be in April of 2019. Oh, and Toadstool. So I had just participated. So I'm like really, really like scary good at the N64 version of Mario Kart, just so everybody knows. And if you want to challenge me, any F3 guy out there, I welcome you to do so, and I will destroy you. I will still destroy you. And I've played since high school. But I had participated in a grown men's N64 Mario Kart tournament that previous weekend, just before the Tuesday Cornhusker Handicap Beatdown, and I won naturally. And it's a great tournament. There's like, 24 guys. There was seating, and there were several TVs set up in this basement. There was a keg of beer. It was a lot of fun, and I won. No big deal. And so they asked me what my name was for the character, and I'm always Wario. And so naturally, that's how I got the name Toadstool. That was it.
Now, was this a sponsored event, or was this something that you put on yourself? I'm interested.
First of all, I didn't put it on myself. I was invited by a bunch of other nerds who also love to play Mario Kart. And it's so bad anymore. Like, I think that was the last one I played in, because after that, the next year was COVID year. And so like, they just didn't get together. But, it had gotten so bad with these systems, because all the N64 systems are like 20 years old, but like, you almost have to do like the old Nintendo thing where you like blow on the cartridge just to make sure that it works when you plug it in. And like all the TVs are now high def. So the TV screen, like, it's all pixelated when you look at it, like the graphics are just that bad. But no, I did not put it on myself, Pony Express. That was merely invited. Thank you very much.
Well, it sounds like you lost the invitation, or your skills are diminishing, and you're blaming the new technology on that. That's okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the first workout. What do you remember? Was it tough? Who was on the queue? I mean, what things did you pick up from that first workout?
It's funny. I'm not even sure I remember who was on the queue that day. Gosh, who was it? I can't remember. What I do remember about the workout, it honestly might have been Tater Tot or one of those guys. But what I remember from the workout is it was like what I came to realize was a pretty standard workout for Cornhusker Handicap at the time. You know how kind of sites go through sort of phases, like, this sort of workout is done for a period of time at a certain site. And then for some reason, it just starts to morph into something else. At the time, I think it was like 4 stations. Like, we had like a station around the playground area. We had a station around that hill where you have to like bear crawl up. We had a station by the obelisk. And then we had like a station, like a pull-up station, that little like, gazebo area. And I think that was what we did or something. I really don't remember that very much, other than remembering that it was hard, and that Folsom talked a lot when I was there. He seemed to have a lot to say. He always has a lot to say.
That's awesome. We should do a separate cast. I want to learn more. Like, is it just N64? Or is this ever, like the Nintendo Wii version of Mario Kart? You're just
no. So here's what I'd tell you about the N64 version of Mario Kart. It might actually be one of the perfect games out there. Like, and I almost put GoldenEye, like James Bond GoldenEye N64 up there as well. Like it's the way in which it's designed, the structure, the way in which the paddles work, like the way how you can speed up your kart. It's all just very, it's the perfect game. So I think later versions, aside from the Switch version, which I think is probably almost just as good, but I think other than that, I think the N64 version is superior. And Wario is the best. He tops the speed out pretty high. And as long as you get a fast start, after, pressing the accelerator in between the second and the third light, then you'll start fast.
I love that. So curious, where were you at fitness wise? So clearly you were a gamer, but fitness wise was it?
Yeah. So I think, and that's really what appealed to me about F3. So like, I mean, I like to bike. I'd run from time to time, probably not very well. And I belonged to the YMCA. So I'd leave my work here downtown. I'd be in court or going to a jail, and then I'd head over to the YMCA and I'd do my quiet lifting or quiet running on the treadmill, right? And I'd have my earbuds in and not talk to anybody. And that was the experience. And that was kind of what I was doing, 3 or 4 days a week and go on a bike ride here or there. But I think the closest experience that I had to F3 before F3 was just whenever I would be able to go out and like ride a bike with friends, right? Or do a taco ride or like one of those rides from the Trek shop, the Midtown Trek store. but like just the ability to work out and connect with people and also push yourself, because I think, obviously I'm a little bit competitive, so just the ability to have that competition element in terms of pushing your own body to keep up with what other people are doing or try to do better for yourself than you were the previous day really appealed to me, and I think is what draws a lot of you guys in. I don't know, what do you guys think? Same?
Yeah, I think so. I think just looking back at that time frame, like Swinger and Tenderfoot, some of those guys were newer, 2019 of April. So it's cool that they were bought in, and then they quickly got you bought in. Do you feel like, you mentioned kind of male companionship or fellowship. Do you feel like, is it the COT, or what do you think it was that kind of made that easier, or just creates that conduit of relationship between men and F3? What have you noticed?
That's a great question. I think, I think for me personally, it was that we're doing a hard thing together. I mean, this is talked about a lot, and it's talked a lot about in a bunch of different contexts, but I think male relationships in particular need an activity, right? They need something that we're doing together. We're not just getting together to talk, or, like we're either playing Mario Kart or we're going on a bike ride, or we're doing this hard physical exercise, right? And so having that you've gone through something hard together, or even just seeing something parallel, so you're looking in the same direction, doing the same thing. I was starving for it. I didn't realize I was starving for it, but I was, right? I mean, I was, for all intents and purposes, a happy guy from the outside. I was, working full time. I had, 3 kids, and they were growing, and I was busy, but I didn't really have, even my good guy friends, and, Lansbury's one and some others, I wasn't really sharing, right? I wasn't really like sort of feeling my way through these relationships anymore. Things had gotten kind of stale, because that's kind of what happens when you get in the same routine, and now having gone through that, through coffees, through COTs, through just the workout itself, some of these relationships are some of the closest I have, and it's made my relationships with those people from before closer as well. I've become better at figuring that out, I think.
Well, it's interesting. We actually just talked to, who did we talk to last? Spacebar last week. And he was kind of in the same unique position of where he knew people prior to actually coming into F3, and had friends, and like within your local community there, right? Within your
we kept trying to push him to come. I remember at Sunset Pool trying to get him to come out. Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, and you briefly like hit it on the head. I think you're going through these moments of like, okay, we're doing something hard together as men, and maybe that's what's taking us to the next level of not being such a surface level communication with your neighbor of, hey, yeah, we'll hang out, we'll see you at the pool, good to see you. Do you feel like that was the case?
Oh yeah, totally. Right. Just and maybe that's what really drew me in after that first COT. And I wish I remembered who did it now. It was more just a feeling of someone opening up that I hadn't experienced in such a long time, and to witness someone doing that was powerful, and I think that we all need that. I think men need that, especially at this stage in our lives, because we are expected to sort of just soldier on with our jobs and our families and what we're doing, and just to put on the brave face, right? The sad clown mantra. So I definitely think that I was in that category. And there's guys like you, the two of you, for instance, you were very central to that. Pony, you and me I know played a bunch of rounds of golf together since getting to know each other. I've really loved getting to know you. Another competitive guy, I might add, who likes to throw his golf clubs or get really angry when he's not hitting a good shot. Plague, you're just a man amongst men. You're so caring and looking out for other guys around you. And I've heard your stories, man. I've heard what you had going on before, and just to hear that from other guys it allows you to do the same. It gives you a space,
For sure. Yeah. And that's, it's the common struggle. And then also just sharing about maybe struggles that are unique to each one of us is perfect. Tell me about Free to Lead. Have you read Free to Lead? Is that,
Yeah.
read? Tell me about that, just your experience. Did you see yourself in some of those stories or anything from that you feel like you identified with?
Yeah, I think parts of it. I mean, it's funny. When I first started reading Free to Lead, because Stinger just gave me his sort of rumpled old copy that he had laying around the neighborhood, because him and me and Swinger would all carpool together for that first like 6 months to a year of workouts. We'd all just carpool, and he just had it in his back seat, so I took it. So I treated it initially like an instruction manual, right? Like, okay, this is how you cadence, this is how you count, this is, and it does that, and it's really good. And some of it I found, very, very important as well. I mean, it's particularly about the development of yourself and your family as a result, if you're treating F3 in the way you should, right? And it's easy not to, which I'll get to in a minute. After 3 years, you can see the ways in which you can use it appropriately and ways in which you can't. But if you treat it with the respect it deserves and follow the plan in which it's designed, then I think it can have real benefits. On the flip side, it is very, I think it's easy, or at least you go through seasons of your life, and I think it's easy to either fall deeply into F3 and almost focus too much on what's going on, to the detriment of your, in my case, wife and kids, where you're not spending as much time or as much quality time because you're either tired at night or you're grumpy because you've worked out too hard and the plague's put on a ridiculous beat down or whatnot, or because you fall out of love with it for a while and then you're not doing much of anything, and then you're just kind of back to this routine that you're not motivating yourself anymore. So you've got to be aware of that, I think. I don't know if that was the answer to the question.
Well, no, I think that's a great answer, because I think if you look at Plague and I, for example, we can be on both sides of the spectrum. I think when people think of Plague, I think his wife, Em, will attest to this, that he is on that all-in side of the spectrum. And I just had my kid, and I recently, over the past 2 months or so, have found myself in the other side of that spectrum.
Totally.
Okay, most of my time I want to spend with my kid right now. Getting up at 5:30, that's my time with him. So
Yep.
Not wanting to go or not being as in love with F3 as I was, that is a feeling. So, you pointed out those realizations that you had. I guess, what was it that helped you kind of right the ship to find your balance or a balance?
Yeah, good question. I think some of it's situational, right? Like having a new baby, and guys are doing it, but congratulations, by the way. But that's hard, right? I don't know that you're necessarily expected to go to an F3 workout for a while when you have a new baby, right? Like, you want to spend that time with your newborn. You want to be present, and if that's the hour in which that happens, then that's kind of how that is, right? And then you find yourself situationally in a space where you're able to do that more and more. I think it's important to sort of be aware, recognize, be present in those realizations. I think even, and this I think is common, you've probably talked to some former Psych Qs on this podcast about, after you get done with your Psych Q, and what does Dredd call it? They call it the dip, right? Is that what it's called? I think even I kind of mentally, even maybe now, kind of go through a slight dip, where it's like, yeah, no, I'm going to post, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do this because I want to. It makes me feel better throughout the day, but also I have an expectation, I think, to a lot of the guys, that I want to be there for them, especially if they're queuing. And but there are periods when it's harder, right? And I don't, I want to sleep in, or I want to stay up late with my wife watching some Netflix show or whatever, right? And I think I've come a little bit more to peace with the fact that that's okay to have those seasons of your F3 life, where sometimes you're more invested and sometimes you're less, but not in the sense that you're not still a part of your community. I still talk to you guys. I still talk to a lot of the F3 guys, especially around the neighborhood, every day. These connections are there whether I like them or not. A lot of you guys are practically like family anymore.
Yeah. I love the way you said that, because I think it's the flux, right? When you think about Free to Lead, it's what they talk about as the flux. And I, when my daughter was born last November, thankfully for me, she was born right before the winter. So I got to but now I'm back in this phase where I hate the cold, and I'm really just posting so I can have coffee afterwards.
Yeah. Just to connect, right? Just to find that connection.
Yeah, so it's been good. I think the other thing that I think maybe Tonight Show was the first one that mentioned this, but if you look at like the Concentrica, uh, you're not on there, right? So it really can't be about you, and those relationships come first. I think like we understand that, but there's also this like internal. I don't know if it's an internal guilt trip or what it is that makes you feel like, oh man, I didn't post, or I didn't. But ultimately, like we all want you to prioritize your family, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. Right. And that is apparent. It's almost like I think the guys that are most drawn to F3, right? They put it on themselves. I mean, it's not so much an expectation by the group, that they're disappointed in you. It's more that I don't want to disappoint someone else, right? I don't want to be the one to not be there for these other guys.
Yeah.
And the most fascinating thing for me, and I know you guys know this too, but like just watching the way in which it's blown up in the past 3 years, and to be a part of it at a time, right? And I wasn't, even like I wasn't one of the first 30 guys. I think I'm like number like 150 or 70 or something. But like to see it now with 1,400 guys is insane. Just to watch, West Omaha or Sarpy County just blowing up in a way that I don't think a lot of us in 2019 thought was going to happen, maybe as quickly as it did, or the way it did, or as big as it did, and it's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting too, the way the pandemic in many ways accelerated the growth, right? I think people were really maybe more isolated and felt that like, oh wow, I have this gap, right? I have a need for human interaction, and we kind of help fill that gap for people.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on the faith, so the third F aspect. So just thinking through, your journey and maybe where you were at before F3, and ultimately, have you found support in F3 to kind of explore or expand or deepen your faith, or what have you found there?
So that's a great question. Probably requires a little bit of like backstory about me. So I was raised Southern Baptist here in Omaha, and that was a particular brand of the Christian faith, right? And then when I was 19 or 20 and in college, I converted to Catholicism. And so kind of just in terms of the spectrum of where you're at between one and, I definitely was on the opposite end of that spectrum. And then, that was for a whole host of reasons, and just the theology attached to it, and kind of the history and a lot of things. But I was also raised, or at least my dad was raised by an Irish Catholic family. So it was almost, there was a familial aspect maybe to it as well. But I think the third F component of F3 is both the most fascinating and also the most tricky for guys, right? It's tricky because it's very easy to lose sight of that component when you're focusing so much on the fitness and the fellowship when you're there. And it's also tricky because there are guys that come from this spectrum, right? Not only that are Christian, you've got Doghouse who's of the Jewish faith, and you've got other folks that perhaps don't believe in a Christian God necessarily, and there's space for those guys, for those men in F3, right? And learning to appreciate where people are coming from their faith is has always been something for me that I really enjoy working out, because working out in my brain, I mean, because there are certain things I tend to disagree with, and I'm sure there's certain things that they tend to disagree with about mine. So that's one component of it. But then there's the personal component of it. Like, how does it, like, to your question, like, how does it affect my faith? How does it deepen it? I don't know if it deepens it in the institutional sense. Well, this makes me want to go to mass more, right? Like, that's not something that necessarily happens, right? I still go a lot, but usually because my daughter's an altar server. But what it does do is look at the ways in which I view my own faith. There's a lot of guys who quote scripture when they come to their COT. I really appreciate that, because being raised Southern Baptist, we were inundated, right? But then as a Catholic, you don't read a lot of scripture personally. There's not a lot of like Bible study that way, and I find that really helpful. It's also just a really good, I think, reminder of the orientation that I should have in my life. So it's tricky because it's easy to kind of not focus on that. It's tricky because of the ways in which guys fall on the spectrum of their faith. And it's something I continue to work through. I don't know. Does that answer the question maybe?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think, this is what at least what I'm learning, right, is we underestimate the value or the wealth of knowledge in other people's experiences, right? I mean, like we're all trying to figure this thing out. And, I love F3 simplifies it as the what, right? What happens when I die, and what does that mean about how I live today?
Absolutely.
And you watch other guys. I think the other thing I've learned is kind of the old, I was in Campus Crusade in college. And so there was this mindset of like, you just tell somebody these 3 sentences and all of a sudden their life has changed. And I think what I've learned is you have to build relationships with people and allow them to go through their own journey. You can't be so forceful with religion on people and try to make them convert, right? You just have to love people and answer questions. And, I think I'm curious as you became a site Q, and I want to hear, a little bit more about how that happened and the name and all that stuff. But was there opportunity as a site Q to kind of steward some conversations around, second and third F stuff, or what was your experience there, just leading other men as they showed up to your site?
Yeah. Well, I would say the experience was very much that, just because, as a site Q, you have all of this. I mean, you have tremendous power. But you have the power to pick your Qs each week, right? And some of the people are going to provide really, hardcore beatdowns. People that are going to provide like a really funny atmosphere, and then the people that are known for their COTs, or at least some of them, and then you've got a whole host of guys that come out of their shell, and you are surprised by the fact that they're able to do this. And I think that one of the things I enjoyed the most about being in sort of a site Q leadership position was just the ability to watch people do that and explore. And the typical group that was at the Coop at Swanson on Thursdays was, it was a bit goofy, it was a bit nutty, but it was always a pretty eclectic COT experience, right? And we had guys like Swinger who liked to meditate, and talk about him being a sort of the guy who's always saying yes to experiences. But and then you had guys like Lansbury, who's now the site Q at the Coop, who I've known for a long time, and to watch him kind of come out of his shell to personalize things, I know it's difficult for a lot of guys. To watch him do it was incredible. And then just to see how people's faith and their fellowship interact in that way, I thought was great. But yeah, I got to the Coop because it was, what was it, guys? Like winter of 2020 going into 2021, and things just as they are now started blowing up a bit more. We had a lot of guys posting at a lot of different sites. I think Battlefield on Thursdays had 20 or 30 guys coming pretty regularly. And I think I had reached out at some point to Tater Tot to just say, hey, I think Swanson would be a great site. That would be a really cool area. You kind of see things the way that like young skateboarders see like, office parks and things, where there's like everything looks like
that's
an
the next spot. That's a spot.
Yeah. That's the spot, right? There's the spot. I was like, Swanson, that's the spot. It's got short hills. It's got, it's got a great trail. It's got this flat field that we can play, whatever on. And so I thought that school was just like primed to be done. And the only downside, of course, is that it's so close to Battlefield, and so I was a little nervous about that. But then I think Tater finally responded, or Plague, maybe it was you, that you guys were like, yeah, let's do it. And so we started the Coop, and I like it. I like that it's a crew of usually, it varies. Sometimes you'll get 20 guys there, but a lot of times it's 10 to 15. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes a little less. I think those guys that regularly show up there are closer because of it. That's what most sites should strive for.
I'm kind of interested. How did the name actually get started? I don't think I've actually heard that story.
Well, okay. So we were talking, there was a few of us texting about it. I think actually Huffy might have been the one who finally proposed it, because we're thinking Swanson chickens, right? Swanson poultry came to Coop. I think for a while there, I was pondering some other was the other one I was coming up with? Oh yeah, like Samsonite. I was gonna call it Samsonite, like from Dumb and Dumber, you know, Samsonite,
Yeah,
Samsonite.
Mary Samsonite. Mary Samsonite.
So I think I want to call it
That's it.
Samsonite, and that was a hill I was prepared to die on. And I was texting because a lot of the guys we have a group chat in the neighborhood around Loveland and Rockbrook neighborhoods, and you know I think several guys, I think like maybe Folsom and Huffy and maybe Safe Ride were like, no, we're not going to do Samsonite. We're not going to do Samsonite. And I think Huffy's like, what about the Coop? You know, and I think he even had like a rough sketch for the Rooster, and I was like, yeah, the Coop, I like that. Right, you know, we're waking up early. We're going to do this thing, Swanson.
Well, and I will say, by choosing that name, you got to have one of the most unique shovel flags of the group. I mean, actually having a bird cage on the flag, kudos to Folsom for that one.
Well, Folsom, if you're listening to me, I quickly took off that chicken wire off the flag because every time I threw it in the back of my car, it was scratching up my upholstery. You know this. It's ridiculous. I appreciate all the work you put into it.
I love it.
Damn you and your chicken wired shovel flag.
You know, it's also one of the only, so when we do Namerama, it's one of the only AOs that has a call sign, right? After you say the Coop. Yeah, you can.
Should I do it?
Sure, let's hear it. Yeah. Nice.
It's not catching on. It's still not catching on with people.
I think it might. There's still time. Talk us through Lansbury and just kind of the selection process.
Yeah, Lansbury is one of the funniest guys I know. I've known him since law school. We started first year together. We instantly became friends. He was always emceeing stuff in law school. He was kind of like, he was the funny guy, right? And if you've spent any time with him, Joe Bradley is his name. He's very clever. You've got to kind of keep up with some of the jokes that he's saying. He's very well read. I think he reads like a book a week. I mean, he does. He's just written a book, by the way, everybody out there. It's called Luftballons. It's about a worldwide pandemic that wipes out most of the population, except there's these children who carry a certain natural immunity that are then being rounded up so that they can, like, I don't know, harvest them or something, or harvest their blood, or who knows, in order to, like, you know, save the planet. It's all about the rebellion of these kids, I think. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to. Anyway.
Wait, what's it called? Say the name of the book again.
Luftballons, Luftballons, I believe.
Luftballons. Okay.
He wrote it during the pandemic with his cousin. They do like a chapter at a time. Like he'd write one, then she'd write one, and then they merged it together.
Nice.
Check it out. But anyway, I had wanted him to get an F3 pretty much from the get-go because of my law school or lawyer friends, he was the one, you know, that him and I were always activity guys together, right? We do like board game nights with some other friends and stuff together. Our families had regularly gone on vacations together. You know, we would do activities together. And so this is an activity-based relationship, right? And I thought he'd really enjoy it. And his instant response and his response for a good, 2 years was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to join your cult workout group or a Christian running group or whatever he would call it. That was pretty much the two phrases. Christian running group or a cult workout group. And then, like, I knew what would happen is, he because once he invests in something, he invests a lot of himself into it. And once he started going, I knew that it was only a matter of time, and it was. And it's been just awesome to watch him just kicking ass.
How did you actually get him there? What was it that made him commit?
He showed up. It was the week after the launch of the Coop. I think it was the week after. And I just told him that, hey, I think this one's closer to you. It's, because he lives over by West Roads. And I'm like, it's pretty close. I'm running it, come once. I think that's how it worked. I can't remember exactly now that I'm trying to pinpoint, but he showed up and then he just kept showing up. So it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's been fun. I ran into him at the pool the other day, and
did you at JCC?
Yeah, a great guy. That's good. Tell me a little bit too. I guess I want to hear. So we've got a lot of exercises, and it takes a lot of practice to kind of become known as an expert at a certain exercise. So tell me about the goofball. What is it about that exercise? And then how does one try to reach your standard of form? I know we won't ever
Yeah,
achieve.
I think we need to talk about two things on this podcast that are really important. One is goofballs. And the other is how most F3 guys don't do Bonnie Blairs correctly. So we need to talk about both things right now, because I'm sick and tired of watching guys do these wimpy little Bonnie Blairs that aren't what a Bonnie Blair is. And then they're like, yeah, do 100 of them. You're like, well, yeah, if I'm doing them your way. But if you're doing them the correct way, you're going to burn out after about 2025. Anyway, let's start with goofballs. I totally just plagiarized what Othello was doing at the Future. Every time at the Future at Memorial Park, Othello did goofballs, and he was so joyful. He was so joyful with it. You've got to have joy in your goofballs. That's the long and short of it. If you don't have any joy in your goofballs, you can't call them goofballs. You got to shake your head. You got to shake your body. You got to get those knees high in the air. It should be as taxing as a Smurf Jack, Red Bull style, if you're doing it correctly.
Okay, I like that. That's a good comparison. Now, I am interested to hear tell me more about the Bonnie Blairs.
Well, yeah. So if you're gonna Bonnie Blair it, I mean, this isn't just like kind of, I mean, you're essentially, what would you say? You're just kind of jumping with one foot in front of the other, back and forth. But as you do it, you've got to essentially squat almost all the way down so that your knee touches the ground. That's a proper Bonnie Blair. And then the cadence is, 1, 2, 3, 1, right? So you're getting really deep sort of squats with each leg on each Bonnie Blair in cadence, as opposed to people just simply like jumping back and forth in place like this while bending their knees slightly, which is what I've started to see. I didn't mean this to be a grievance podcast.
Hey, no.
I have a grievance about people's Bonnie Blair performance.
That's good. Maybe we'll have form week one of these days, and
I think we should. I mean, I get it. You have to modify as needed, but just don't call it a Bonnie Blair.
Right. I love that. Hey, we've been trying to get advice from guys on kind of EH strategy, or just, when a new guy shows up, or, what have you seen that's been effective for kind of getting guys to the workout, or keeping them there, or just being good stewards of our kind of culture as we introduce F3 to new guys? What's worked?
That's a great question, because I for a while there was a pretty good EH'er, and then, I've just sort of gone through my Rolodex at this point, or just gotten lazy and have not EH'd quite as many. But I mean, I think the strategy truly is just, if you're with a guy in whatever environment you're in, whether it be like, he's picking up his kids that had a play date with your kids, or it's someone you see at a school function, or, a guy you work with. In Gator's case, him and I were having a jury trial together, and we were kind of on break, and I just was like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Like, I think we had closing arguments that afternoon. And I was like, what are you doing tomorrow morning? And he said, nothing. I was like, great, let's, go to top rope. So we did. I think it's just asking, right? Like, I think you just have to ask and then follow up with like a text. And then just say, hey, and be willing to pick them up if they're close enough to you. With Gator, he's out in Elkhorn. I'm kind of midtown, so it didn't work. But with a lot of guys, you just got to pick them up, because I think it's that feeling of like being led through something for the first, you're just having someone that's kind of there with you, and just not really having much of an expectation that they have to commit to it after that. If they take to it and they like it, great. If they don't, it's not their thing, then I think that's fine. I think the hard sell is where it gets tricky. You don't want to give a hard sell. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Can appreciate this. Well, yeah. I mean, I think persistence is key. I mean, I think one thing I've recently learned with, like, Red Ranger, for example, I was trying to EH him for 6 months. Hey man, come on out. It's always here. He's like, oh, I do my own thing. Then I realized you just got to bring like someone cooler than you, like, out to help EH you. Like, so we went to lunch with Da Vinci, and Da Vinci's like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? He's like, nothing. He's like, all right, I'll take you up. And then so Da Vinci actually got like, he's part of his tree now.
Yeah, right.
So, right. I mean, that's fine. So I guess if you can't do it yourself, don't be ashamed to like have someone like help you bring someone along. Maybe someone like a little bit cooler and more distinguished than yourself.
Yeah, well,
like
of course.
Yeah, there's there's a Stuff Worth Trying podcast that Tommy Boy and Italian Job put on from.
Oh, okay. Okay.
and they actually talked about this triangle of kind of like a battle buddy. So like pairing up an F&G with a guy he doesn't know for his first workout. And then you kind of have like, I think they called it a Papa Bear, as like the guy who EH'd him or something. So you kind of create this, give him a new connection, and partner for that first beat down. But then obviously they still maintain the relationship with the guy who EH'd him. But I don't know. There's, I think I've seen it done both ways. And on this cast, we've had some guys love it when the new guy stays with the guy who brought him, and other guys really strongly dislike that model. But
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I have persisted with some guys. Like I know like on Slack, people talked about like getting Snips back out. Snips came one time, right? But I mean, that guy, he was a Division I athlete before he hurt his back when he came to an F3 workout, and I get it. I get why he wouldn't want to come back.
I think Snips secretly listens to this podcast. So Snips, if you're out there, you need to come back out. So we had a small group, and he was literally the only guy that was not coming out to F3. So yeah, Snips, if you're out there, come on back.
That's funny. That's really funny. But no, I love being a part of it with you guys. I love watching how it changes in ways that you just don't anticipate. I love meeting new guys and how those guys become leaders, and how we sort of just by design begin to take a back seat here and there, but then find opportunities for leadership in different ways. Love the coffees. Love the collateral ways in which this has fundamentally altered the trajectory of my life, right? Like I know people now, you guys, others, that I am very, very close to, and shared a lot with, and they've shared a lot with me, and I'm going to be friends with a lot of those people for probably the rest of my life. So,
well, we're certainly honored to get to know you and to have now become part of your life, and hopefully part of your extended family, as much as you may or may not like that.
Yeah, brother, you too.
Said, are there things that, we could be praying for you for if we see you out there, words of encouragement that you need personally, or just things that you're kind of working through?
Oh gosh, it's nothing that maybe the rest of us aren't going through in our own unique ways, but are common to all of us, I think. There's always work stressors. There's always going to be family stressors. I'm in a bit of a pressure cooker kind of job. I'm in court a lot. Before this podcast, I was just down at the Potawatomi County Jail, seeing a guest down there for an hour who got himself in a little bit of trouble. I think we could all use the prayers to handle our work effectively, and then when you go home, to let it go so that you can be around your loved ones.
That's awesome. I did have just one more memory, and I appreciate that. I will be praying for you on that. I do think you've shared a lot of wisdom with me over the years, but one of my favorite kind of definitions that happened, I think at Cornhusker, we were running, and I ran into a sign. And knowing you were an attorney, I asked if I could sue the park. And you kind of mentioned this term. I wonder if you remember. It's an attractive.
Yeah, it's a classic term in tort law. Tort law is about it's injury law, and it was an attractive nuisance. That sign, was you were looking at it, you were headed straight for it. An attractive nuisance, if it exists. Now that's not really an attractive nuisance under the law, but something that like kids would play on. That's clearly a dangerous item. Someone might find themselves in a bit of trouble and have some liability for the unsafe conditions on their premises because of the attractive nuisance that is located on said premises.
Yeah. And the reason that's important to me, and this is why we say our disclaimer, right? Because most of the things we use during workouts are probably in that category, right? If you get hurt doing box jumps up on the ledge at Cornhusker, I don't know. You don't probably have any ground there. But I just
here's the quick question. I know we're running out of time. What is your favorite? It can be any site in Omaha or Sarpy County or wherever. What's your favorite attractive nuisance? F3 Omaha guys, feel free to respond on Slack as well after this. What is your favorite attractive nuisance in Omaha? What do you think yours is?
If I had to, so I would have to really think about it to be sure, but just what's coming to mind is the monument at Futurama.
Okay.
think there's a lot that can be done there. The monument and
Like chicken peckers and everything else that we do.
yeah, I think that the monument at Futurama would have to win for me.
I'd have to go with that one too. I mean, there's something kind of sacred and forbidden about that monument anyway. So it just kind of adds to the mystique and the desire to kind of just like be there and you know, respect it, but respectfully do my chicken peckers on it.
Mine is definitely the short hill at the Coop, in between one wing of the school and the other wing of the school, where it's just a punishing little hill that you can use for like 60 million different kinds of workouts. I just love it. And then you get to the top and it's all windows and you can just look inside like a creep. What a great, attractive nuisance.
I love that. Well, Toadstool, this has been great, man. And we definitely appreciate your leadership. It's been cool to watch you accelerate. And, you know, if guys are listening, you know, hopefully they feel comfortable reaching out. But I think whether you need legal help or just a friend, you know, I think Toadstool is your guy. So let's take us out in Namerama. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Brandon Flehardy, 36, The Plague.
Plague. John Whitworth, 30, Pony Express.
Pony
Express. Sean Conway, 41 or 42.
Oh,
Toadstool.
Toadstool. Ah!
Toadstool.
Do it right.